meets the road in terms of my experience. That all the way through, I really came to the Lord meaningfully when I was in my early teens. And I mean, I believed everything I knew before that, but that's where it went deeper into me. And all of the theological truth and the things about being forgiven and accepted and life change and looking forward to heaven and all the rest of it were the things that got me through adolescence. And so I've always kind of paid attention to what difference does that make to a normal person, being as pretending that I'm a normal person. That's kind of how I deal with everything. I've mentioned that, you know, in the kind of the things that we got to make sure we don't miss, the church has historically given seasons to. And so Advent reminds us that the Lord Jesus came to earth, and Epiphany reminds us that it's because God loves the whole world and wants to reach them. And so Jesus died. During Lent, we remember his death, and during Easter season, which we're in now, we remember his resurrection. And these things matter because when we come to faith in Christ, then we're given new life. And then we're looking forward to the ultimate resurrection, but we're wanting to experience even now new life in him. And so these are the things that are there. And then the Holy Spirit, the Pentecost season, the rest of the year is reminding us that God is at work in you and in me, trying to make us more and more like Jesus and to make a difference in this world through us. And so those things are all supposed to be transformative in some kind of a way. Of course, the point is that we love God, love one another, and help other people to do the same thing. And I've been grabbing this verse where Jesus says, you know, if your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. If your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. And I've been meaning to just draw our attention to that dynamic where we everything is influenced by our outlook. Everything it's how we see things, and how we see things is largely determined from a Christian perspective by where we are with Jesus. And so if we're in the right place with the Lord, then things that happen take on different meaning than when we're not in the right place. And so I've called this idea vision care, because from this little graphic or picture, you know, you can have a beautiful sunset out there, and if you can't focus, you can't see it. And so that's kind of like your eye being dark. So we don't want our eyes to be dark. And so then I'm just talking from my own experience and how the text has changed things for me. I'm passing that on to you. Hopefully it's helpful, and you can come up with your own list of things. But at the heart of what I'm suggesting is it can be helpful to review those truths, those things that matter most, just to kind of go over them a little bit every day in order to refocus our hearts, so that we are branches connected to the vine. We are walking in the light. We are walking in the Spirit instead of the flesh. That all of those pictures that the Scripture uses, that's what I'm talking about. And I've suggested my list that I just go through at the moment. This is my list that I do pretty much every day, just to remind myself you got nothing to prove, nothing to lose, always thankful, always trusting, always hopeful, always compassionate, and always engaged. And I'm not suggesting I am all these things. I'm saying that that's where I'm leaning. That's what I'm leaning into. That's where I want to be. And so I just kind of remind myself of those things and try to let the Lord speak through them. When I say nothing to prove, what I'm talking about is we stand with God by grace. It's all by grace. Wherever you're feeling pressure that you're not enough, it's not true. Well, it is true you're not enough, but what is, you know, it's that I'm okay, you're okay. It's actually you're not okay, I'm not okay, but it's okay, because the Lord receives us by grace. And I think it's really important to connect with God's grace every day, and to remember that you have nothing to lose, because you've all of your life, the Lord is greatly blessing us and is caring for us and is protecting us. And whatever we're afraid of losing, the Lord says, hey, I know who I believed, and I'm persuaded that he is able to keep everything I've entrusted to him until that day. So we don't have to be living defensively. We're always thankful because we have been so deeply blessed. And of course, you know that thankful people end up being joyful people. because and a lot of it is whether we choose to notice the blessing and to offer thanksgiving. Every time you thank someone for something and thank the Lord for something, you deepen pathways physically in your brain of gratitude, which transforms the way that you see other things. Of course, there's struggles we can have. Of course, you can struggle with depression. There's all kinds of well, yeah, but also's that you could say in all these things, but I can't talk about everything at once. Then today, where I want to go is to the next one, which is always trusting. All of these overlap. When you talk about having nothing to prove, it's because you're trusting that God's grace is adequate. Nothing to lose because you're trusting that He's going to preserve what you need and give you what you need. Always thankful. I mean, they're all overlapping. But today, just to focus for a little bit on being trusting God. Here's our mountain. We're climbing the mountain of life or something. I don't know. Like I say every week, I just like the picture. But we're always trusting. That's where we want our heart to be. And so I'm just going to give you a few reasons and how I think that works. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to Him or acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. This is this passage out of Proverbs, of course, tells us that when we trust the Lord, when we put our faith in Him, and we don't require that we understand how it all goes together. We don't demand that we get an explanation. We drop the whys and instead reach up with our hands and say, God, I don't know why, but I'm going to trust you. That in that situation, the Lord makes our paths straight. Some of the older versions would say direct your paths, but the idea really, it seems like, is that He will make your paths direct, that he makes things simpler, clearer when we trust Him. He makes the road go where it needs to. So I'm suggesting, first off, we want to always be trusting, because the benefits of trusting God are great, at least the promised benefits. Here He says, hey, I'm going to straighten everything out if you will just trust me. Rely upon me. Trust in the Lord, and He will make your path straight. You want your path straight? Trust in the Lord. That's the combination that He has going right there. The other places, just to mention a couple other, I mean, you can go through the whole scripture and find that when you trust God, it works out better for you. But just, you will keep Him in perfect peace, those whose minds are steadfast because they trust you. Some of you are hearing a song. Thou will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. That's the thing this comes from, that same verse in Isaiah there, and that we're relying upon Him. He says that He offers us peace. New Testament, it's where it says, offer all of your problems to God and He will give you peace, that His peace will guard your heart. Peace comes to us, perfect peace. If we want perfect peace and minds that are steadfast, the pathway to that is trusting God, relying upon Him. Jesus asked the boy's father, okay, I'm going to go back to this Mark 9 section a couple of times. It's the story where Jesus comes down from the Mount of Transfiguration, and there's a guy there who's got his kid has a demon that's giving him epileptic seizures, and Jesus and the folks that were there with him couldn't figure out how to heal him. And so Jesus walks up on this situation, and in the middle of it, he says, how long has he been like this? He tells him it's from childhood. But then the reason I'm showing you this is because then he says, but if you can do anything, take pity on us. And then Jesus says in response to him, he says, I'm not even reading it right. I'm sorry. And my thing's not clicking it. There we go. Jesus says, if you can. I'll get to that in a minute. But the thing I want you to notice is he says, everything is possible for the one who believes. I want you the whole thing that I've said right here is just to draw attention to the fact that Jesus says, when you trust God, anything is possible. The door is open. That, of course, doesn't mean, Jesus even says, if you have faith, then you can tell the mountain to move and it will move. But obviously, if God doesn't want the mountain where you wanted to move it, He's not going to move it because you have faith that He's going to move it. And so I'm not suggesting that you can do anything you want but because you trust God. But it means, most of the time, it means that you can get through anything if you will trust Him. Trust in the Lord. He'll make your path straight. Perfect peace, minds that are solid and steadfast on the rock come from trusting God. Everything is possible for the one who is willing to trust God. The whole point I'm just drawn to begin with is there are many promised benefits. We want to trust God if we can find a way to do it, because it will pay off. You know this is true in your own experience, don't you? You know that when you trust God, things calm down. That the stuff that you're worried about, if you can remember, oh, the reason I'm scared about this is because it's out of my control, but that doesn't mean it's out of God's control. I'm going to trust the Lord. And you can find that peace that he discusses come upon us. And so we want to find that place of faith because there's promised benefits. It pays off. That's where we want to live. So that's what I've said so far. If you followed that much, you are tracking with me. He goes on, what then shall we say, or I go on, he says here, what then shall we say? I got to move that little square out of my way. There we go. What shall we say in response to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? Quoted this even during communion. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? He didn't spare his son. He's not going to withhold anything that we need. It's a fairly obvious, logical link. And I'm suggesting that not only are there promised benefits, but we all have past experience that God can be trusted. We know this. We've had the experiences that tell us, I didn't know how I was going to get through that, but I got through it. I can trust God with the thing I'm looking at, where I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Here the past experience is the big past experience, is that he offered Jesus. If he would give us Jesus, he will do anything for us. Old Testament Psalm, it says some trust in chariots, some in horses. This is the problem the Israeli kings always had. Old Testament Israel king, they'd want to trust in chariots, they want to trust in horses. It's like trusting in a wall, if you had a wall, or trusting in some kind of big defense. If you're rich, you're counting on your money. If you got a weapon, you're counting on your gun. We always want to trust in other things, but here it's some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. And then he gives you, because they says, because we've looked around, and those who trust in chariots are brought to their knees and fall, but we rise up and stand firm. And so we know that when we trust God, it pays off in that kind of way. This is the familiar passage. I give you this one every couple months because it's really critical. Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death. Apostle Paul, 2 Corinthians 1, he says, but this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. If he can raise the dead, he can do anything. If he'd give us Jesus, there's nothing he'll withhold. He delivered us from such a deadly peril. He will deliver us again. On him we have set our hope, and that he will continue to deliver us. Next week, I want to talk about hope, faith, hope, gratitude, nothing to prove, nothing to lose. They all overlap everything all over the place. But here, I just want you to catch that if we rely, that he wants us not to rely on ourselves, but on God. Even the difficulties come in order that we might learn not to trust ourselves. We have to be up against some things we can't handle, or we will trust ourselves. We're a mess. That's how we are. We will not turn to God unless we can't find anywhere else to go. That's how we are. It's kind of miserable, isn't it? If all your friends, the only reason they talk to you is because no one was home. But this is how it is for God. The only way he gets us is he has to close a lot of other doors. But he wants us to be trusting him because he has delivered us. He will deliver us again. And he wants us to set our hope on him that he will continue to deliver us. Hebrews 11, this one just, I'm not even going to spend the time. Here he just tells us that all the folks in the heroes, the chapter 11 of Hebrews is the heroes of the faith, and all of them, what they did was they continued to believe God for things that he didn't even deliver while they were still alive. That shouldn't come as any big surprise, that some of the things we want don't happen on this side of glory. That's how it has always been for people who follow Jesus. That's how come you have to, quote, keep the faith, is because you continue to believe him even though it's not all coming together quite yet. And that is where we find that peace. That is where we find that settledness, is because we're trusting in him. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on the earth. And you know this works. Mechanics. I have a mechanic. Actually, the car this time is in the dealer because it's still on warranty. But when I go to the mechanic that I go to, I trust him. Whatever he tells me to do to my car, I have him do it. I've had a few times where he could have told me something really expensive, and he told me, no, it's not that. Don't do that. You don't want to waste all that money. Just do this. He's done that enough times so that I believe him now. It doesn't matter what he tells me. If he tells me that I need to have the head is cracked, I know that he's not going to tell me the head is cracked if the head isn't cracked. I believe him. And so I trust my mechanic. Maybe I'm an idiot, but I trust my mechanic because I found him to be faithful. And so I trust him. I don't want to make any political statements. I just want to say that for most people, the place they end up politically is based on who you trust. It's who you believe, because we have two entirely different views of reality now, and it's who you trust is get you there. I trust my doctor too. When I go into my doctor and he says, well, you know, this is the situation. There's this medication. Do you want the medication? I say, how would I know if I want the medication? I'm a preacher. You want to talk about Jesus? You want to talk about what's going on in your heart, spiritual heart? Talk to me. If you want to know what to do medically, how would I know? I know that people talk to me about theological things that are clueless. And so they don't know they're clueless, but I know. And so when I talk to the doctor, I know I'm not making the decision. You tell me what to do. So I always, with my doctor, say, well, what would you do if you were me? And then when he explains it, he's a good guy. He kind of tells me why I have to decide, and he's not going to decide for me. But he's going to decide for me because I trust my doctor. I'm not telling you that you should trust your doctor like I do or trust your mechanic. I don't care. You can figure that out. I'm using those as examples. What I'm saying is you can trust God with your life because he gave us Jesus. Think also for just a moment. So if there's anything you're worried about right now, can you remember where you were worried and didn't know how it would work out before? Have you had any of those experiences? They usually get bigger as you go. They don't get bigger. It's the ones that don't get bigger don't bother you because you learned how to deal with them earlier. But the whole growing thing is to learn where God has brought you through what you didn't know how you would get through. Your faith was tested, and you held on to him, and you found that you could endure what you didn't know you could endure, and that the Lord was in fact sufficient. You know, you got to that place where, what is it? You don't know how much you need. Now, how does it go? You don't know. I can't remember the line now. It's Jesus. Oh, you don't know that Jesus is all you have until Jesus is all you need. I'm saying it wrong. I'll remember it and tell you some other time when my brain works. But there you go. I'm trusting him because I have found him to be faithful. Past experience. Promised benefits, past experience. These things tell you want to trust God if you can find a way to do it. I'm just going to read you a couple of passages of scripture. They're familiar, but what I want you to catch here is Jesus' attitude towards trusting God. Therefore, I tell you, don't worry. You know this section, Matthew 6. What you eat or drink, about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They don't sow or reap or store in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worth much? Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? Do you hear him saying, trust God? Will you please just trust God? And why do you worry about clothes? See, the flowers of the field grow. They don't spin, labor. But even Solomon didn't have any nicer clothes. If that's how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So don't worry, saying, what shall I eat? What shall I drink? What shall I clothe myself? The pagans run after all these things, but your heavenly Father knows you need them. So seek first his kingdom, his righteousness, all the rest will be given to you. Don't worry about tomorrow. It'll take care of itself. Do you hear Jesus? The whole thing under that is, would you stop worrying? Would you please just trust God? And I don't hear it as condemning. It's instead saying, here's the good news. You can actually trust God. Promised benefits, past experience, and then the attitude that Jesus has. Here you see that attitude where he says it, and then his attitude when he sees faith or the lack of it. This is the passage in Mark 9 I said where the guy shows up with the kid that's got the seizures. When they came to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd around them, the teachers of the law arguing. As soon as the people saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with wonder and ran to greet him. What are you arguing about? He asked. A man in the crowd answered, Teacher, I brought you my son who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not. This is why I'm taking you to this passage. I want you to catch Jesus' response to what he sees as a lack of faith. You unbelieving generation, Jesus replied, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me. Do you get a little bit of exasperation in Jesus? Because they're not trusting God. They're not trusting. And when they don't trust, it frustrates them. So they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, immediately threw the boy. Jesus threw him into a convulsion. When they brought him to Jesus, it threw him into a convulsion. The spirit fell to the ground, rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, how long has he been like this? From childhood, he answered. It's often thrown him into the fire. And then catch this. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. Jesus' response, if you can, everything is possible for the one who believes. You see in this passage, he's frustrated that the crowd, or that they don't believe and were unable to do the work that was there for him. And here he says, if you can. Now, obviously, that could just be a figure of speech. He could have just been saying, I don't want to impose anything. But it looks to me like Jesus is exasperated by that. And so Jesus tells us, you don't have to worry, man. It is covered. And then when he encounters a lack of faith, it's frustrating to him. One more thing under this point, it's just another story. I know I'm throwing a lot of scripture at you, but there's just a couple of points you got to grab as we go by them. And I'm obviously going to run over a minute or two anyway. When Jesus had finished saying all this to the people who were listening, he entered Capernaum. When he goes into Capernaum, there's a centurion servant whom his master valued highly, who was sick and about to die. The centurion heard of Jesus and some elders of the Jews, and sent some elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, the elders, they pleaded earnestly with him, this man deserves to have you do this because he loves our nation and has built our synagogue. So Jesus went with them. He was not far from the house when the centurion sent friends to say to him, Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. This is why I do not even consider myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. And isn't this amazing? Jesus goes to the religious leaders, and they want to kill him. The guy who's a Roman centurion, he hears about Jesus, and he's humble before him. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell one, go, and he goes. That one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. He says, I know how authority works. When Jesus heard, and he says, so you don't need to come, just tell this thing to go away. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him. I can still remember reading this and writing in the margin of my Bible, oh, how phenomenal to amaze Jesus by your faith. Wouldn't that be cool? It's so cool to imagine Jesus is amazed by this guy's faith, turning to the crowd, and he says, I tell you, I have not found such faith even in Israel. Then the men who had been sent returned to the house, found the servant well. So he was amazed. So I'm suggesting here, when I talk about this attitude of Jesus towards things, he says, don't worry, trust God. And then when he encounters a lack of faith, it frustrates him when he sees that we don't trust. And when he sees us trusting, he marvels at it. Isn't that cool? Don't you want Jesus marveling at your decision to trust? instead of frustrated that you're saying, no, I'm not sure you can handle this one, God. That's not where you want to be. That's what I think. Last point. I think it's the last point. Yes, it is the last point. Jesus, and back to this story we just read, when Jesus asked the guy, how long has it been like this? And he says, childhood. Then he says, but if you can do anything, take pity on me. And then do you know what happens after that? Immediately, or Jesus says, everything is possible for one who believes. And then this guy says what I'm encouraging us to say. Immediately, the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. I want to suggest, and and then it goes on to show that he does heal him. And so since he heals him, the guy must overcome his unbelief. What I just want you to grasp in this is that God is that, well, I'm going to give you that point, is that God wants to help us to believe. The help is available. But when we find ourselves freaked out, if we could focus a little less on what is freaking us out and a little more on trusting God to be enough for what's freaking us out and calling on him to say, God, give me the peace. God, I want to trust you. Give me the faith. Deal with that heart issue, and then you have the energy and the clarity to deal with whatever issue there is out there that needs to be dealt with. Help is available. I'm not going to go here. This just goes on in James to talk about our faith being tested. But I can skip that one and still get where I need to go. Always trusting. The promised benefits are great. Our past experience tells us that God can be trusted. Jesus' attitude tells us that we would much rather, we don't want to freak him, or not freak him out. We don't want to irritate him by being freaked out. We instead want to have him marvel that we trusted him, even though we didn't know what was going to happen, and that he wants to help us to be able to do that. Wrapping up, always trusting. Relying on God is the central life-giving movement of the heart. That's where it is. When we're trusting God, it gives us the freedom to be humble. We don't have to believe that we're better than everybody else because it's not dependent on that. We're trusting God. We don't have to pretend we can handle things we can't. We can be honest and open about whatever it is because we're trusting in him. That's the central life-giving movement. Everything else revolves around whether we can trust God and lean into his grace, trust God and trust in his power. The Lord has demonstrated that he is reliable. What more can he do? He did not withhold Jesus. He came up with a way to save losers like you and me. We can trust that he knows what he is doing. And we each have examples we can look back to. They did this Old Testament. When the Israel, went across the Jordan River, God stopped the river. Moses stops the river. God stops the river for Moses. They build a monument in the middle, stack rocks up in the middle and say, hey, I want your children to see those rocks. When your children see those rocks, you tell them, we had to get across this river and God stopped the river. And that's supposed to let them know if God can stop the river for them. If your parents remember those places where you saw that movement where God delivered you and you didn't know how he would, and tell it to your children because his reliability has been demonstrated and it's key to being able to make that heart movement. And look at this, man. Jesus loves it when we trust him. You want to give something back to Jesus? You trust him. He loves it. He marvels. I can't imagine anything better than having Jesus marvel at some movement within me. And so it's just like, hey, when it's tough and you don't know what to do, you remember, I can please Jesus if I can trust him through this. Or you can just bug him, frustrate him if you want. Then the last one is, he will fill in the gaps if we step out in faith. You don't have to have a lot of faith. Jesus says faith of a mustard seed, just a little bit of faith. It's just enough faith to take the step. It's enough faith to say, I'm going to trust God, to take that step and call on God. I believe you, Jesus. Help with the stuff that I can't fix here. I help me with my unbelief. I'm done. So we're trying to talk about getting things in focus. And for me, it helps if I stop every day and say, I got nothing to prove because I'm standing on God's grace. I got nothing to lose because I know whom I believed, and I'm confident that I can trust him with everything. I'm always thankful. Why am I thankful? Because I'm blessed beyond reason, much better than I deserve. And so that you end up looking at all the many blessings of this life, of life itself, of the promised life that's coming, and always trusting, because it's better. They're so much better off when we trust God. It only makes sense because he's reliable. It makes Jesus happy. What more do we need? And he will help us do it. So don't accept the place that's short of trusting God. It's just not, there's no point in living there. I'm done. Move you guys out of the way. I got to stop.